Hey guys, thanks for tuning in today. I've got some super exciting news. I finally pulled the trigger on an ARB bumper for my pickup. It's a 2002 Tacoma. Ever since I got this truck, I've been wanting this bumper, but I just haven't pulled the trigger on it until this week. And even better news is that it's here today. The shipper is going to actually come let me pick it up today instead of waiting for them to deliver it tomorrow, which works a little bit better for me and it allows me to start this install a bit sooner and get it on the truck before the weekend. So I'm going to bring you guys along for the ride and we're going to go grab this bumper. Alright, we're going to load up and take the trailer because I don't think the bumper's going to fit in the back of the truck with the canopy on. Alright, we just got the trailer loaded up and we're on the road now. Only about 15 minutes or so until we'll be there, and we'll load the bumper up on the trailer and bring it back home and then start the install process this evening. Alright, just got the bumper loaded onto the trailer. You can probably see it behind me. Super pumped though, can't wait to get back to the house. Gonna put the trailer in the garage, finish up work, and then we're gonna see if we can't get this baby on there ourselves tonight. I'm hoping I can do it by myself, but I might need to call in some help, but I'll catch you guys in a little bit. Alright, I'm ready to start now. The first thing we're gonna do is probably get the bumper off of the trailer. I'm gonna try to, and then move the trailer out of here, and then we'll pull the front of the truck up in here and we'll begin taking off the front bumper on the truck. I did spray some WD-40 on some of the bolts that I could see there. They all look pretty good, so I shouldn't have any issues, but just in case. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started and see if I can't move this beast onto the ground. Alright, it's time to get this thing off. So one of the first things I gotta do is unhook this light bar from the bumper here. I just gotta undo my brackets and get it kind of just loose and hanging, and probably disconnect it altogether. It's unfortunate that I'm gonna have to likely ditch this light bar. I don't believe it fits on the bumper in between the uprights. I think it's just too wide. So probably gonna have to go to some circular lights most likely. We'll have to look at what we have for options there. But gonna go ahead and get this off, and then we're gonna work on pulling everything else off the bumper and getting it ready to come down. Actually, before I get started on that, I'm gonna visually inspect this, make sure it looks good and there's no major problems with it before I tear off the front bumper on this and find an issue with this one. So hopefully we're all good here. I'm gonna open it up and we're gonna see what it looks like. You know, I have to say, I'm actually thoroughly impressed with how this bumper was packaged. Looks like everything is in perfect shape, not even a scuff or a scratch anywhere on it. Super awesome. You never know with big heavy things like this and shipping how they'll be handled. I did get the Integrate finish, so it's a nice textured matte finish, which I think is going to look really sharp on that. So, looks good. I'm going to go ahead and get on tearing that bumper off. So, before we get started, we got to take off the light. So you just unscrew the bulb there. Then there's a bolt through here, and see if I can get under here. Yeah, there's two bolts in the back there. So there's three bolts on each side, one right here and two up in there, and then same thing on the other side. So remove the lights, take the three out on each side, and then this bumper cover itself will just come right off, and then we can get to the brackets. Also, there's two push pins actually one push pin on each side. So remove those things before you take off the bumper, or else you're going to be putting it back up to get them off. All right, So I have all of the bolts off of the bumper now except for two, one on each side, and they're loosened all the way up to almost the end. I just want to leave them on there, make sure this didn't come falling off on me while I was getting everything else off. But now it looks like it's ready, so I'm going to take off both of those bolts and should be able to just pull the bumper off. There she is. Alright, now that the front bumper is off, we can go ahead and start pulling this stuff off to get it all ready for the ARB bumper. With the bumper, there was also the second box here. Looks like it's got the brackets in it. I believe the turn signals should be in one of these boxes as well. And then there's, it looks like another plate right there, and probably some directions. So I hear these instructions are horrible, and they definitely look to be that way, pretty sparse on directions, but we got to take off, I believe, this bracket, this bar across from here, the crush cans, which will take this bracket off, and I think even the hooks. I'm not sure yet, but we'll see when we get into it. But yeah, I'm just gonna start taking things off of here and see if we can't get the other brackets that come with the bumper on without having to resort to YouTube myself. Alright, the next thing we'll do is we'll take off the crush cans on a 2002 Tacoma and some other years right around this year. You don't have to cut these off. I think it's just earlier models and maybe Forerunners. There's actually a bolt in here to pull off the crush cans, and then we're going to have to take the hooks off as well. You'll also have little bolts right here that hold on the skid plate that you'll have to take off. Looks like I've got two here. So I'll just undo those before taking off this the crush cans in the center section. Finally broke this free. It's a lot easier if you don't have a little bitch ass tool set like mine. Wrench like this or longer, or an air tool. Definitely needed for these. Alright, it says the next part we just fit the indicators into the bumper over there, those slots. Don't forget to take the lens off the bumper. There's your screws and a little O-ring in there. And then we'll just get these together and we will go slot them into the bumper. Okay, so the next part is putting in the turn signals. To do that, there's these little plastic tabs. And these tabs, you just push them into these metal tabs in the bumper, and then once we get those tabs in, you'll put the light in, and the screws will go through the light into those tabs and secure it to the bumper. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Alright, there we are. We got the light in the bumper. Now we're going to repeat the same process on the other side. Pro tip: before you start this, order yourself some metric drill bits up to 13 millimeter, because your local hardware store is probably only going to have standard sizes, and a half-inch drill bit is usually as big as they get, and that's just a fraction off of 13 millimeter, so I'm probably going to have to use a Dremel to get that to the right size. But we're back now. We're going to put on the rubber bumpers, the bump stops on the front, and a license plate bracket, and then we'll move on to the brackets on the truck itself. Okay, we're going to put on this bracket here. We've got the little clip bolts on there, and then it's going to be 3 of the smaller bolts with a washer. And it looks like my skid plate's bent a little bit, unfortunately. Yeah, it's bent a lot of it. Okay, after searching on the internet for a bit, I finally figured out the hardware you're supposed to use for putting these on, at least I think. They don't include bolts in the kit for putting this end cap piece on. You actually recycle the stock ones that you took off, and these just go on here and sandwich this cross member between the frame and these frame extensions, and then the mount goes on top, and these fill in a gap there. So I'm going to go ahead and install these. A little tip here for putting these on if you don't have ratcheting wrenches. A socket doesn't fit in here. Well, maybe if you have a really thin one it might, but mine don't. You can just take the wrench, stick it in there, and just spin this baby around until you get it tight. You don't need to tighten this part completely just yet. You can still slip the bumper hanger on there and then come back and tighten it afterwards. Okay, so it doesn't really tell, the hardware just comes loose in a bag, so it's not like it's separated by, you know, this is M10, this is that. So these look like M10 cage nuts. We're going to be putting these into the brackets here. So I'm going to slot these in, and the next step will be mounting these on the truck. Then we'll use these other ultra fine bolts to go up underneath. Okay, you can see that we got the bumper hanger on. There's still room to tighten down that bolt there on the frame extension. And we have the cross member on. Make sure you install it with the flange pointing towards the rear of the truck, not the front, or you'll have to take everything apart. And then we went ahead and just left this all finger tight on here for now, and then we're going to do the other side. Okay, update. So I put on the frame extensions with the factory bolts that were holding on the crush cans prior, but actually I believe you use the two other, I believe they're 40 mil bolts, ultra fine, that you attach this side on. You actually use the two that you would think you would use on this side to attach the frame extensions, and then you use the factory bolts to reattach the tow hook on this side. So I didn't know that. It doesn't actually matter, I believe, using these factory ones. They were holding on the crush cans for the stock bumper, so I think they should be fine. I don't believe I'm going to bother changing them out, but we'll see. It's a lot of work to get those in and out of there. I may change them, I may not, just to have all of the good new hardware in there. Gotta tell you, this install way more difficult due to the terrible, absolutely fucking terrible instructions. The internet has a PDF that's a little bit better, but it's still bad, and that's what's made this take way longer than it should. If there were just good instructions, this would go a lot smoother. Hopefully this will help some of you guys avoid some of the issues I've dealt with, and maybe it'll go smoother for you guys. So let's get into it some more. Okay, it's getting pretty dark in here, so I brought in some additional light. It is way too late tonight. I'm going to mount up these last two bolts on the brackets here. Everything's just kind of hand tight right now. After I get these mounted up to secure these onto the frame extensions, I'm probably going to mount up the bumper and get it where it looks right, and then torque everything down and pull the bumper back off before I do any drilling, because I don't want to drill the holes before the bumper is mounted and looks like it should, because really only going to get one shot at that. So I'm going to go ahead and mount these up, and then catch you guys in a little bit. Okay, totally realized that I had these nuts, these cage nuts, on the wrong side. They're actually supposed to go on the inside of the bracket here, so I'm just going to flip them around. Super easy mistake, and then we should be good, and then I should be able to put the bumper on. That's home. Now let's make sure it looks right and centered, and then we'll begin tightening down the brackets. Okay, so now that we're ready to drill holes, you'll see that next to where the tow hook would screw in, there's that little hole right there. That's our pilot hole. That's gonna help us drill in the proper spot. So we're gonna go ahead and start drilling through there. It says use a 10.5 mil. So use the closest, probably on the little bigger side drill bit that you have for that. And yeah, I guess we're just gonna go for it. Alright, it's the next day now. I had to wrap it up last night, I was getting late. But we have one side drilled through and the bolt through the frame. I'm just working on the other side now. The drill is a little dead, so I gotta recharge it. And then we'll be able to put the bumper up and get that on, and then we'll splice in the new connectors for the turn signals on the ARB bumper. And that should be about it. I will kind of wrap up some challenges that I had and some difficulties that I encountered once I kind of get a little bit further along. Just let you guys know what you can expect on this model of truck in particular, and some challenges that you might face. Definitely not as easy of an install as I thought it would be. A lot of that was due to the manual, or rather lack thereof, not enough information in directions to actually really carry this out. So I had to turn to the internet a lot to kind of figure out what I was supposed to do. But hopefully this will help you guys if you're in the process of doing it or thinking about doing it, and hopefully you won't have as many challenges as I had. But I'm going to finish up, and then we'll take a look once the bumper's on there. Okay, so you can see how that bolt goes through the frame there. Same thing on this side, I just gotta tighten those up. And then I also painted over where I drilled through the frame just to prevent that stuff from rusting. So I'm gonna tighten up all these now as close as I can, and then slide the bumper on and get that fitted, and then we'll do a final tighten. Alright, fitment between the mounts might be a little tight. I just had to kind of force it in there, and it fits up nice and snug and is pretty centered. I think where the bumper mounted previously on this side is actually a little bent. The bumper before was a little pushed in. This is a little pushed in, so I think that's messing with my alignment. It's not horrible. I would say it's maybe 1/8 of an inch off. I'm not gonna bother with it right now. I could very well tap a tree on this side and push it all back into alignment, so I'm not gonna worry about it, and we're just gonna go ahead and get this thing bolted up. All right, she's mounted. This thing's not going anywhere. Tip for when you put it on: put the center bolts on both sides and snug them up fairly tight. That will allow you to move the bumper up and down and rotate it front to back to get it level and the clearance is correct. And then you can snug in the other bolts as well. And then once you have it all dialed where you want it and it's level and the spacing is all correct, then you just cinch them on down. So I've got everything tightened on here. And now the only thing to do is install the splash guard up under here and attach it to where the skid plate mounts, and then splice in the turn signals, and finally I will be done. So very happy to be getting here near the end now. The hardest is over, and now it's time to just wrap it up. All right, it's time to wire in the turn signals. They give you a loom here, which connects from each turn signal and connects to your stock turn signal wiring. And then they give you these splice connectors here that help you splice into this loom right here. So we're gonna go ahead and start that. I'm thinking I'm probably gonna cut this actually to probably be about this long and then splice it in. I don't need all the rest of this harness. Maybe some application might, but certainly not here. So probably just gonna cut it, and then I'll cut off the factory bulbs, and then we'll just wire these together and call it good. So I just use a little multimeter here to figure out which wire was positive, so I can wire up my little pigtail here. Looks like the green wire is the positive wire, so I'm gonna go ahead and just splice these together now, and we'll do the other side. We'll probably just check the wires again to confirm that the same color is the positive wire. And then we'll put on the splash guard under here and license plate. That's it. All right, we got one side done. I just used the included little snap splicing deals and hooked those in and then plugged it in. So I'm just gonna tape this up and clean it all up, tuck it up in there, and we'll move on to the other side. Got the splash guard on under here. This only installs one direction, so make sure you take a look at it before you try and fit it in there. It's got a slight slope downwards towards the back. Don't be surprised if you have a hard time getting your skid plate to conform to where you need it to be. But she's all good. Wiring's all tucked up in there for the turn signals. And we're good. All right, that's a wrap. She's on. Okay, so it's been a few months since the install. Nothing to really report on the bumper. I haven't put a winch on it yet, and I haven't done any recoveries off of it, so I can't comment on like the strength or durability. The only thing I did was hit a small tree that was sticking out into the middle of the road, and it just left a small little scuff in the finish. But that's about it. No dents or anything like that. I do really like this textured finish. It seems to hold up and look good through a variety of conditions, from the salt on the roads here and the cinders. Still looks just as good as the day it did when I put it on, when it's all washed and cleaned up. So I think it's going to be a much more durable finish in the long run as opposed to the glossy finish. So I would highly recommend picking up the Integrate textured finish if you're looking at this bumper. But yeah, I know that installing this bumper on the first gen can be a challenge. I had difficulties with the instructions. They're not very great. So hopefully this video helped you guys with your install and made it go a little bit smoother for you. Stick around. I'm probably going to be doing a review on my new rooftop tent here shortly, so keep a lookout for that. But thanks for tuning into this video, and I hope you guys found it helpful.